Imagine a country where stepping outside could be a death sentence, where gangs ruled the streets and fear gripped every citizen. This was El Salvador just a few years ago. Now, it's a different story. But at what cost? El Salvador, a tiny Central American nation, was once the murder capital of the world. In 2015, it had a staggering murder rate of 103 per 100,000 people. That's like having a 9/11 attack every month in a country smaller than New Jersey. The gangs were in control, and the government seemed powerless. Fast forward to today. Murder rates have plummeted by over 90%. Tourists are flocking in. El Salvador is making headlines for its stunning turnaround. But this transformation didn't happen by magic. It came at a price that sparked debate around the world. The man behind this change, President Nayib Bukele. Young, charismatic, and tech-savvy, Bukele swept into power in 2019 with a bold promise. He would crush the gangs, no matter what it took. Bukele's first move was shocking. He ordered a complete lockdown of prisons. Gang members found themselves cut off from the outside world. No visitors, no phone calls, not even sunlight. Their power base began to crumble. But that was just the start. Bukele declared a state of emergency, giving police unprecedented powers. They could arrest anyone suspected of gang ties without a warrant. Thousands were rounded up in a matter of days. The results were immediate and dramatic. Murder rates plummeted. People who had lived in fear for decades suddenly felt safe walking the streets. Businesses reopened. Life began to return to normal. For many Salvadorans, it was like waking up from a nightmare. Parents could let their kids play outside. Shop owners could stay open after dark. The constant fear that had hung over the country for so long began to lift. But not everyone was celebrating. Human rights groups raised alarms. They accused Bukele of trampling on civil liberties. Reports emerged of innocent people caught in the dragnet, of overcrowded prisons and harsh conditions. Critics warned that Bukele was becoming a dictator, using the gang crisis to consolidate power. They pointed to his confrontational style, his willingness to use the military to intimidate opponents, his attacks on the media. Bukele's response? He didn't care what the critics thought. He was doing what needed to be done to save his country, and many Salvadorans agreed with him. As the crackdown continued, something unexpected happened. El Salvador's image began to change. No longer just known for violence, it started attracting attention for other reasons. Tourism boomed. Investors who had once shunned El Salvador now saw opportunity. The government launched ambitious projects, including plans for a Bitcoin city and the adoption of cryptocurrency as legal tender. But the controversies didn't stop. Bukele's Bitcoin experiment faced challenges. His style of governance continued to raise eyebrows internationally, yet his popularity at home soared. For many Salvadorans, the trade-off seemed worth it. After years of living in fear, they could finally imagine a future for their country. Young people who once dreamed of escaping now saw reasons to stay and build. The transformation of El Salvador raises tough questions. How far should a government go to ensure public safety? Is it okay to sacrifice some freedoms for security? And what happens when the emergency is over? These aren't just abstract debates. They're questions that many countries grappling with crime and instability are asking themselves. El Salvador's experience offers a case study, but one with no easy answers. As for the gangs themselves, they're down, but not out. Some have gone underground. Others have fled to neighboring countries. The root causes that led to their rise, poverty, lack of opportunity, social inequality, haven't disappeared. Bukele's government claims to be addressing these issues. They've launched programs to create jobs, improve education, and provide opportunities for young people. But critics argue these efforts are overshadowed by the heavy-handed security approach. One of the most controversial aspects of Bukele's strategy has been mass incarceration. Tens of thousands have been arrested, many on suspicion alone. The government built a massive new prison, dubbed the Terrorism Confinement Center, to hold gang members. Images from this facility have shocked the world. Prisoners packed together, stripped to their underwear, with shaved heads. Bukele proudly shared these photos, calling it a message to the gangs. But human rights organizations saw it differently. They warn of overcrowding, lack of due process, and potential abuse. Reports suggest that conditions in El Salvador's prisons are harsh, with limited access to food, water, and medical care. Some argue this treatment could backfire, creating more hardened criminals. Yet, for many Salvadorans, these concerns seem secondary to the dramatic improvement in their daily lives. Streets that were once no-go zones are now bustling with activity. Families picnic in parks that were previously gang territory. Businesses stay open late into the night. This change has had a ripple effect on the economy. With improved security, foreign investment has started to trickle in. Companies that once shunned El Salvador are now considering it as a potential market or manufacturing base. Tourism, in particular, has seen a boom. El Salvador's beautiful beaches and ancient Mayan ruins are drawing visitors who would have never considered the country before. The government has capitalized on this, launching campaigns to rebrand El Salvador as a tourist paradise. But perhaps the most surprising aspect of El Salvador's transformation has been its embrace of cryptocurrency. In 2021, Bukele announced that Bitcoin would become legal tender in the country alongside the US dollar. This move was met with a mix of excitement and skepticism. Supporters saw it as a bold step towards financial independence and a way to attract tech-savvy investors. Critics warned of the risks, pointing to Bitcoin's volatility and the potential for financial instability. The Bitcoin experiment has had mixed results so far. While it has certainly put El Salvador on the map for crypto enthusiasts, adoption among ordinary Salvadorans has been slow. Many struggle to understand or trust the new currency. Despite these challenges, Bukele has doubled down on his crypto vision. He's announced plans for a Bitcoin city, a tax-free haven for crypto investors powered by geothermal energy from nearby volcanoes. It's a futuristic vision that seems at odds with the country's recent violent past. All of these changes, the crackdown on gangs, the economic reforms, the crypto gamble, have made El Salvador a fascinating case study in rapid national transformation. But they've also raised concerns about the concentration of power in Bukele's hands. Critics argue that Bukele is using the gang crisis and the promise of economic prosperity to dismantle democratic institutions. They point to his willingness to use the military to intimidate political opponents, his attacks on the media, and his moves to stack the courts with loyalists. Bukele dismisses these concerns, arguing that he's simply doing what's necessary to save his country. He points to his high approval ratings, often over 90%, as proof that the Salvadoran people support his methods. But as the immediate crisis of gang violence recedes, questions about the long-term sustainability of Bukele's approach are growing. Can El Salvador maintain its newfound peace without constant crackdowns? Will the economic benefits of improved security trickle down to the poorest Salvadorans? There are also concerns about the regional impact of El Salvador's policies. As gangs flee the country, neighboring nations like Honduras and Guatemala are reporting increases in criminal activity. Some fear that El Salvador's success could come at the cost of destabilizing the entire region. Despite these challenges and controversies, there's no denying that El Salvador has undergone a remarkable transformation. A country that was once synonymous with violence and instability is now being talked about as a potential economic success story. For Salvadorans who lived through the darkest days of gang rule, this change is nothing short of miraculous. Many express a new sense of hope for their country's future, something that seemed unimaginable just a few years ago. But the story of El Salvador's war on gangs is far from over. The country stands at a crossroads, balancing between the promise of peace and prosperity and the risks of authoritarianism and human rights abuses. As El Salvador continues its journey, the world watches closely. The successes and failures of this tiny Central American nation could have far-reaching implications, shaping debates on crime, governance, and economic development around the globe. What will be the next chapter in El Salvador's remarkable story? Will it become a model for other nations grappling with organized crime, or a cautionary tale about the dangers of sacrificing liberty for security? Only time will tell. One thing is certain: El Salvador's bold experiment has rewritten the rules of what's possible in the fight against entrenched criminal networks. For better or worse, it has shown that rapid, dramatic change is possible, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. As we watch El Salvador's continued evolution, we're left with a final pressing question. In the quest for safety and prosperity, how much is too much to sacrifice? The answer may shape the future of nations far beyond Central America.